Alright, great to be back here at BBI. It's good to be in front of all of you and all of you folks out in Nebraska. Thank you so much for taking the time and tuning in with us this week. We're going to get into probably one of the more anticipated lessons. We had to lay a bit of building block foundations in the previous weeks to get to this one. Tonight we're going to look at key signatures and accidentals. We're going to learn what flats and sharps and naturals are, and how to be able to look at something and say, oh, that's written in the key of F, or that's written in the key of C. Because that is something that seems to be greatly complicated to some, but yet it's very simple once you understand the basis, the ingredients of how to understand that. So tonight that's what we're going to be looking at. So look at your outlines with me first. Number one, we're going to look at what accidentals are. We're going to review, and we're going to look and see what sharps are, and that simply tells us that we were going to raise the note a half a step. In last lesson we learned what half and whole steps were, and this is the reason we had to do that first in order to understand what a sharp was. Because if I tell you that a sharp raises half a step, if you didn't know what a half step was, it wouldn't make as much sense. So hopefully the confusion of our previous lesson will really come together and just click after the lesson tonight. So know that a sharp will raise a half a step. That's why when you go from C to C sharp, or the white note to the black note, we know that that's a half step up, and the sharps are the black keys on the piano. Then a flat will lower a note a half step, okay? Now, in rare occurrences, you're going to see double sharps and double flats. Most of the time, you'll never see a double sharp, but you could see double flats more often than a double sharp. Since each flat would lower a note one half step, a double flat would lower a note a whole step. Two half steps, or a whole step in other words. We'll look at those later. And then of course your natural sign, as you see there in subpoint C, a natural sign cancels a sharp or a flat. So if in the key signature, as you'll learn tonight, in the key of G, all F's are sharp. But if you want to manipulate the song a little bit, if you wanted to play F natural, because all F's from the beginning to the end are understood as sharp in the key of G, you would have to write in a natural sign to lower it back to on the piano, which would be the white F instead of the black F, okay? So that's what a natural does. It cancels sharps and flats. Number two, we're going to look at key signatures. They indicate in the beginning which notes are going to be sharp, flat, or natural throughout the entire song, unless it is otherwise indicated accidentally. Hence the term, it's an accidental. A sharp, flat, and a natural is an accidental. Sometimes they will be thrown in there accidentally to change the song a little bit. In a key signature, they're always going to be all sharps or all flats. You'll not have a key signature that'll have sharps and flats. It'll either be all sharps or all flats. Accidentals that are not indicated in the key signature only apply to the notes within the same measure. You'll learn that here in a little bit, but what I want you to understand is that if in the key of G, we know that all F's are sharps, okay? So anytime in the key of G, because we know that the G's and everything but the F's will be naturals, in order to have something to be flatted or sharp, it has to be thrown in there. And in that measure, from bar line to bar line, if there is an accidental on, say, the D's, where all the D's are going to be sharp for some reason in that measure, it applies to everything in that measure. It doesn't apply to anything after that measure or before that measure. In that bar line to bar line measure, if there's a D with a sharp sign, accidental thrown in there, every D in that measure is sharped also. It's just understood. It doesn't have to have sharp sign, sharp sign, sharp sign. It'll just have a D sharp, and then the rest of the D's in that one measure is sharp. If it's not, it'll have a D with a sharp, and if it's not supposed to be sharp, the rest of the measure, it'll have a natural sign, because the natural sign cancels all sharps and flats. Okay? Indicated at the beginning, key signatures are indicated at the beginning of the song following the clef sign, before the time signature, and at the beginning of each grand staff throughout the song. Now remember, we learned when we did our time signatures that the time 4/4, 3/4, whichever, is only stamped at the beginning, and that's it, unless it changes. Key signatures are always at the beginning of each line of music regardless, on treble clef, bass clef. By the way, if it's for treble clef, it also applies to bass clef. You can't have two different key signatures for treble clef and bass clef. It's the same. But they're going to be at the beginning of each grand staff throughout the song, unlike time signature, which is just at the beginning, and that's it. When we use key names like the key of C and the key of D, it indicates to us which note on the piano the scale would begin. So if Mom, let's say Mom was coming to play a song tonight in the key of C. The reason she knows she's in the key of C is because the scale begins on C. And that's how we know we're in that key. And learning, as you'll see tonight, what each key means will tell you which are sharp, which are flat, which are natural, etc., etc. But if you didn't do too well in last week's lesson, you might not do too well in tonight's lesson, so just ask for help, okay? Key name is determined by memorizing the number of sharps or flats that each key may have. For example, in sharps, you'll find the further sharp to the right, go up a half step, and that's how you know what key you're in. So in the key of G, when you look at the key signature, you'll see a sharp on the F line. In order to know you're in the key of C, you would find that sharp and then go up half a step, and you're in, that would be G, natural, so that means you're in the key of G. It's easier to visualize, but I'm just trying to explain it to you briefly before we get into it. And in flats, the rule of thumb, as I've written out here for you, is you would find the second furthest flat sign in the key signature to the right. So you go to the end, back up one, and that's what key you're in. Just so you know, that's what the outline is for, is just an overview of what we're going to do. And then thirdly, we're going to look at writing scales. There are always 8 notes in every scale. How many notes are in a scale?
8.
Always. That's why it's called an octave. What does the prefix OCT mean?
8.
How many sides does an octagon have?
8.
How many legs does an octopus have? How many sides does a dodecahedron have? Jason got it. But anyway, so octave tells us there are 8 notes. So from C to C is 8, because there's only 7 letters in the musical alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Well, number 8 is going to go back to A. So from A to A is always 8. That's an octave. Okay, that's where we get the term. The first and the 8th note must always have the same letter name. If it doesn't, you messed up somewhere. Go back and fix it. When you're doing a scale, there must always be a half step between 3rd and 4th step, and a half step between 7th and 8th notes. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Remember? Between all others, there's always going to be a whole step. You have to use each letter of the scale. So if you're starting at A, you can't go A sharp. You have to go to the next letter in sequence, which would be, after A, it's A, B. Let's practice our alphabet. A, B. Okay, so it has to go in sequence. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But you have to focus on whole, whole, half to know which one of those letters are going to be sharps, okay, if you're going up. You can't skip over any letters, and you have to move as each letter comes. Okay, lesson number 16. Lesson number 16 on flats, your 3rd page there. A flat looks like a lowercase b. It isn't, but it's what it's similar to. It's very similar to that, okay? That's what to connect right there. They are used on the blacks of the piano keyboard. When going down, they're flats. When they're going up, they're sharps. For some reason, unexplainable reason, to a pianist in this area of the country, flats are easier to play than sharps. Is there a difference between a sharp and a flat? Mom, is there a difference between a sharp and a flat? No, there is not. They're the same key, but it does have to do with your mindset and what you enjoy. I don't know many pianists that enjoy playing in the key of E because it has so many sharps. But you can look at it and you can play in E flat and not have to adjust in your mind the notes on the scale, because you're just looking at them and just playing them as a flat instead of a sharp. But you're technically a half step lower. That's irrelevant to the lesson tonight, but just know that you're going to run into people that hate sharps. The only people I know that enjoy sharps are guitar players and violinists. Everybody else thinks that sharps are of Satan and flats are from the Father. That's all I know, okay? Amen. So an example, B flat is a half step lower than B. So we know B is the white key directly to the left of C, middle C. So this would be B flat would lower it a half step, which would be the black key directly to the left of the B. It's a half step lower. And you can see that on your chart there, your diagram. Anytime you're flatting something, you're moving it down the scale, or if you're looking at the piano keyboard to the left, a half a step. Trick question and a lot of musical trivia that you'll learn. Some people will try to trip you up and say, give me a C flat there, will you? Well, is there a C flat on the keyboard scale?
No.
There is not. Look between your C and B and see if there's a black note. There is not. But because we know that a flat lowers a pitch a half a step, what would be a half step lower than C? B. So technically C flat is B natural. Somebody tells you to play me an E sharp or an F flat. You know that they're not talking about a black note that doesn't exist. What they're saying is half step higher than an E would be a F, half step lower than an F would be an E. It can be done, and you will see some music, some key signatures have C flat written in them. Just try not to do those. It's just terrible. But that, just musically, you have to remember, a flat means to lower half a step, okay? So, look at number 1, and practice drawing the flat signs by tracing over those dotted lines, and then draw 5 more flat signs in that staff. Trace over the 3, then draw 5. I drew 1, I'm going to draw 4 more. Okay? Now number 2, go through, draw a flat sign in front of each of those notes. Now obviously, if a note is on a space, you put your flat sign in the same space as the note. If it's on a line, put it on the exact same line. Then you're going to write the names of the notes that are indicated in the little spot there below each note. So for example, first note in number 2 is on the A line and has a flat. So it is an A flat. So trace over that flat sign to get you one more shot of practice. And then go to your next note, write the flat sign on that line, and name each note from that for the treble clef, and then go back and do the bass clef below it. If I were to offer you a chance at extra credit by doing a 100 note name speed test on your exam, how many of you would actually do it? If I gave you a time limit, you had to do it within 2. Huh? Huh? I've got it made, I just haven't decided if I'm going to implement it yet. I might wait till next year. I'd say that if I gave you a time limit of, say, 10 seconds per note, you ought to be able to grab those pretty quick, don't you think? I'd say so. I'd say so. That would add up to quite a lot. But I think you could do it. Okay, once you finish number 2, go to number 3. Now you're going to draw the notes on their line or space, and you're going to be putting a flat sign with it. So draw the notes that are indicated and put your flat sign in. Treble clef and bass clef there on number 3. Okay, turn the page. Now let's look at lesson 17 worksheet here for sharps. So if flats lower half a step, we already know that sharps raise half a step. So to go from F to F sharp is going from the F natural, which is the white key, up to the black key to the right of it and making an F sharp. But if you look at the G, that same key that's F sharp to the left of the G can't be F sharp if you're going from G down to it. What would that be? G
To the right.
to the left of it. F sharp. Look at your diagram there. See, you find your F and see your F sharp. Now if you're going down the scale, you would use not sharps but flats to go down. So if that key is F sharp because you're going from F to F sharp, well if you're going from G down to that, what would that be?
F flat.
G flat.
G flat, G flat, yeah.
I know what you're thinking. That'd be G flat, okay? So each of those things have a dual name. It depends on whether you're going up or down the scale, okay? So let's try drawing some sharps there on number 1. And just trace over those, draw out 5 more. Those are not pound signs, number signs, or hashtags for the newer generation. Those are just plain sharps. And they're not tic-tac-toe boards or anything else. Those are sharps. So practice drawing those. It's a lot easier to do when you have a chisel tip marker like this because you can make your horizontals fat and your verticals skinny. Works out better that way. Progressively worse as it went on. I'm not the one getting graded for this. And once you're done with number 1, go ahead and start number 2. Same format as the previous worksheet. Draw your sharps in and then name the note that you have there. For example, the first one is C sharp. So the next one, add a sharp to that G and call it G sharp. Yes. And then once you're done with number 2, go ahead and do number 3, just like you did in that previous worksheet. By all means, if you need help, you can raise your hand. I'll send Jerry back there to help you. Yeah, take your pick. Whichever one wants to volunteer.
Is there a reason the sharp sign is on the left side of the note?
Yes. That's just the proper way to do it.
That's all it is.
Yeah, that's it.
Draw the note that's below the line or above the line has a line through it. Is the sharps was have a line through it so it shows where you are?
Major line, in other words.
For example, the end, the last one on 2.
No laser lines to put your half of your sharps.
Oh, no, just imagine that it's on the line. You don't have to draw a ledger line for the sharp. suppose anybody has some Rolaids or Tums or anything with you. I tried that new jalapeno fresco Wendy's chicken sandwich today.
Really?
Wow.
Still eating it, aren't
Yeah, me and Jerry stopped. He wouldn't try it, but I did. It's got that ghost pepper sauce on it, and oh my soul, mercy. You know that I was trying to describe it to him. You know, in the summertime, in the summertime when it's really hot outside, and you drink a really cold drink or a milkshake, and you can just feel it lining your esophagus and your stomach and all that stuff. Well, this is the opposite of that feeling. It's not that cooling sensation. It's more one of those kind of sensations, you know. So, bless you. Mom gets extra credit for tonight. Thanks. How many you got? 6? Well, 2 will be good for now.
I saw somebody play like fries, the jalapeno fries.
Yeah, the ghost pepper fries. I didn't go that route. They wanted an extra 50 cents for the ghost pepper fries. I said, no thanks. Those are peach. They're good. Looks like a milkshake flavor. It's almost like a sorbet.
Watch that, sherbet.
Sherbet, there we go.
It's a country people.
Yeah. Okay. Let's turn the page now to your next page, which is a quiz on musical symbols. What I want you to do, go through here and turn the page and look at number 5. That concludes the quiz. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the second page of this print off here. So just go through, do each of those. Now I do want to point out, everybody look at number 3, and then look at number 9 under number 3. Notice the funny looking symbol next to the A. That's a double sharp. Okay? So just know that that symbol is a double sharp, which means you would raise the note 2 half steps, which is a whole step. So go up a whole step for number 9. That's what that is. So start number 1, go through number 5, and then we'll begin scale writing. Give you a few minutes to do that. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. And this is part of your homework, so you know, this is one of the things you'll be turning in. Yes, you are turning it in. plan wearing the same shirt? No, just works out that way. I don't know, not or mine. I don't have one, but I could have got one. Give you about 35 seconds. Finish this up.
Before I need to hand it in?
Hmm?
Before I need to hand it
No,
in?
no, 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 no. You don't have to hand it in now, but this,
Okay.
if you don't finish it, this will be homework that you do need to finish and turn in. I'll take from you next week. Number 4 ought to be easy. I kind of did that for you. That's hilarious. Didn't even realize I'd put that in there. Maybe I knew it subconsciously and it just might come out. I wanted to explain that to you. All right, next page. Be the one that has the number 5 of your quiz at the top of it. We're going to start right below it on scale writing. So everybody look, it should say page 28 at the very bottom of your sheet there. Scale writing. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to write a complete scale on the treble staff. You've learned how to recognize scales, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Well, what we want to look now is what it looks like when it's actually on the treble clef, okay? So, for example, that it's given here, starting on the middle C, here's how the scale would work. It would go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Notice there are no flats or sharps because the way it works out, from C to D is a whole step. From D to E is a whole step. E to F, or number 3 to number 4, is a half step. So there's no sharp there. 4 to 5, or from F to G, is a whole step. G to A is a whole step. A to B is a whole step. And then from B to C, or 7 to 8, it's just a half step. But because it doesn't involve a black key, there's no need to throw a sharp in there, okay? So that's what it looks like, the C scale on the treble clef. There are 4 rules you have to remember when writing a scale on the staff. They will always be true regardless of which note you choose to start on. If you start on E, A flat, B, D, it doesn't matter where you start, these 4 rules always apply. Number 1, there are always 8 notes in a scale. What did we say the note is when you have 8 notes? The word is octave, okay? There are always 8 notes in every scale. Number 2, the first and the 8th, or the first and the last, must have the same letter name. It's always going to be the same. So if you started on C, you shall end on C. That's an octave. C to C. Number 3, there must always be a half step between number 3 and 4 of the scale and between number 7 and 8 of the scale. Between all other notes in the scale, there must always be a whole step. And number 4, you must do something with each of the 7 different letter names. You can't skip over any. So if you start on A, you have to go to B next. Then you have to go to C. You have to go to D. You have to go to E. But you also have to pay attention when you're going from A to B. It is obviously going to be B natural because A to A sharp won't work. It has to go to B. It can't be B flat because you're going up. So A to B, that's a whole step. But from B to just C natural is only a half step. So you got to go from B to C sharp, okay? So you have to use each letter name, but you have to pay attention which ones are going to be using the sharp signs, okay? That's called moving diatonically. So if you ever heard of a diatonic scale, it means you're correctly using the whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half format of a major scale writing formula, okay? So look at the bottom of number 1. This is the scale of D that has been written out for us here. We must call the third note of the D scale F sharp because of our rule that there must be a whole step between every note except for the 3rd, 4th, and 7th, 8th intervals, okay? If we had gone from an E to just an F, obviously that would be just a half step, right? Because there is no black key in between them, moving from E directly to F, it's just a half step. But the formula calls for a whole step in that one. So that's why we go from E to F sharp. So turn the page, let's look at the top of number 2. Number 2, we couldn't call this note of the G scale G flat, even though on the piano keyboard it is technically the same thing. We know that it is F sharp or G flat, but you can't call it G flat because of our diatonic rule that you can't skip over any letter names. So you can't go from E to G in the alphabet, move diatonically, so you have to go from E to F. But it has to be F something. Well, we know it can't be F naturals, so it has to be F sharp. So D, E, F sharp. That's the diatonic rule of those 4 rules that you have to follow when you're writing a scale. You have to do something with each successive letter name. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. But you have to notate between the 3rd and 4th, there's going to be a half step, and the 7th and the 8th, there's got to be a half step. So pay attention, you're probably going to have a sharp in those. Our 7th note, this is number 3, our 7th note of the scale has to be written as a C sharp. Now you can go back and look at that scale as I read along with this. Notice that the 7th note of that scale is a C sharp because of our rule that there must be a whole step between 6 and 7. If we had gone from B to C, this would just have been a half step. We understand that there is no black key between B and C, so just going from B to C is a half step. We have to go from B to C sharp to make our whole step. Okay? So, look at this part now. A scale starting on the note E. Notice all the sharps that the E scale has in it compared to the D scale or even the C scale. The C scale has no sharps. The E scale has lots of sharps because you have to move up whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So, some scales are going to be predominantly on the black notes, and you just have to pay attention. So if I'm looking at it, go back to, let's see, which one was the one I had them named? Okay, go back to the worksheet that says lesson 17 sharps, okay? It has all of your black notes there. So if you're moving, let's say you're starting on C sharp. I can't give you a complete C sharp scale, but let's say we're starting on C sharp. If you're starting on C sharp, you have to, which is the black key directly to the right of C, middle C there, okay? C sharp, the first step has to be a whole step, right? What's the formula? Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So the first 2 steps are whole steps. So C sharp, whole step from that would be to do D sharp.
D sharp.
Then your next step has to be a whole step also. So it would be from D sharp to F. Because a half step is from D sharp to E, and another half step is from E to F. So a whole step would be D sharp to F. But the next one calls for a half step. So it would be from F to,
F sharp.
well, but we can't use the same letter name, can we?
No, can you go back to D sharp?
That's why when you start on C sharp, you have to do it in D flat instead of C sharp. Ta-da! Using music tricky. It's just so much fun, isn't it? Sorry to burst your bubble on that one, Jerry. I told you you'd learn something exciting tonight. Anyway, forget I even brought that up. I shot myself in the foot. I told you this Z-Pack thing that they've got me on makes my mind not work too well. Back to our worksheet we're talking about. Page 29 at the bottom it says, E scale. Here's a scale starting on the note E. Notice that this time there are 4 sharps used in order to get the proper whole and half step movements. The E scale, here's a scale start, oh well, that's next. So the E scale, we start on E. And going from E, the whole step would be to F sharp, has to be. Because if you go from E to F, it's only a what?
Half.
It's only a half step. Well, the first step in our formula, whole, whole, half, half. The first step has to be whole. So it can't be a half step, so it has to go from E to F sharp. And then from F sharp to G sharp. See, you have to have that whole step movement. That's why it has all these sharps in that scale. Now, let's move on. Here's a scale starting on the note F. Notice that this time there's just 1 flat, and that's a B flat. We must write this as a B flat and not an A sharp, even though they sound the same, because of the diatonic rule that you can only use each letter once. So if you're going to F, G, A, and technically that is A sharp, but you can't have A and A sharp, it has to be a B. That's why we call it B flat. F, G, A, B flat, and then C, D, E, F. Okay? If we had moved from A to A sharp, we would be doing two things with the same letter A, which is what I just said. Now look at the scale at the very bottom, the G flat scale. We'll do one more with you, and then we'll try to do a few on our own. This time we'll start on the G flat and build a scale. Notice that almost every single one of these little rascals has a flat sign in front of it. This would be the scale that if you were on the piano, you would be going on every single black note almost. Okay? It's really interesting. So notice that you're going from G flat to A flat to B flat, but notice, what does the C have next to it? That's a flat sign. What is C flat? B. So I told you you'll see things that are noted as a C flat. Good thing I told you that's the same thing as a B, right? Then you go from B or C flat to D flat to E flat to F, then to G flat. Okay? So turn the page. In the G flat scale, there are 6 different flats. The first and the 8th note flats have the same letter name, which is G flat. Okay? Did you notice that the 4th note of the scale is called C flat? I believe I just covered that. Boss man, thank you very much. How about that? Me and this guy think alike. This is again because of our diatonic rule that we can only do one thing with each letter. If we wrote B flat to a B, we would be doing 2 things with the same letter name. So, drawing a few practice scales here. We're going to start on G. If we start on G, what are we going to finish on? G. So, when you're writing a scale, say the format with me. When we're doing a major scale, it's whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Okay? So you have 2. Somebody ate the tip off of that marker. Wow. So when you do a major scale format, you have a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay? So if we're starting on G, according to our formula, the next note will be a whole step up from G. What is a whole step up from G?
A.
A. So put a whole note on the space for A. And then number 3, the second step in our scale requires that we use a whole step. What would a whole step up from A be for number 3?
B.
That would be a B. So draw you a whole note on the line for B. Now, notice that he wrote in here to remind us there's only a half step between 3 and 4. Well, look what we have here. It says to do a half step. So what's a half step up from B?
C.
Are you sure it's not C flat or B sharp? Well, it would be a B sharp, but because diatonically we have to do something with the next note name, it's just C. Okay? So half step up is what we're doing. Half step up from a B is a C. So put a whole note for number 4 on C. And then number 5, next line tells us that we have to use a whole step. So what's a whole step up from C?
D.
D. Very good. So write you a whole note on D. Number 6, we know we're going to have another whole step. So a whole step up from D would be
E.
E. So draw you a whole note for E. And then last of all, we have a half step from E. I'm sorry, it's a whole step, one more whole step from E to
F sharp.
F sharp, Jerry. Good job. Give him a star. F sharp. Has to be a whole step for that one. From 6 to 7 is a whole step. So if you go from E to F, that's only a half step. So E to F sharp. So write your sharp sign next to that F. And then we know that the last step is going to be a half. Going from F sharp to G is a half step. We did it correctly. So let's look at A together. Number 1, we're starting on A. The first step is going to have to be a whole step. What's a whole step from A? B. So go ahead and write your whole note there for B. Number 3, the second step has to be a whole step. What's a whole step from B?
C sharp.
C sharp. Very good. Okay, so we go up a half a step from C sharp. What would that be? D.
D.
Now we're going to go up a whole step, D to
E.
E. Up another whole step from E to
F sharp.
F sharp. Good, good. Up one more whole step from F sharp to
G sharp.
G sharp. And then we know that our last step has to be a half step up. So going from G sharp to A, we have arrived on A and we started on A. We did it right. So you understand a little bit more about how to write a scale. Now let's do one of the most difficult ones you'll ever do, the B. We're going to start on B on the ledger line there. Going up from B, we're going to have to go to a whole step up from B. So a whole step from B would be
C sharp.
C sharp. Now go up another whole step from C sharp to
D sharp.
D sharp. Ooh. Go up a half step from D sharp to
E.
E. Now go up a whole step from E to
F sharp.
Now go up a whole step from F sharp to
G sharp.
G sharp. Up one more whole step from G sharp to
A sharp.
A sharp, and then a half step up makes us land on B, and that's where we started. So we did those correctly. How about that? So turn the page, look at the next worksheet here on the major scale. This is just re-emphasizing what I've already taught you and getting it driven into your minds. Major scales are whole step, half step. Whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So you can rhyme it by going whole, whole, half. Okay? So that's the way that it works. And that's just visualizing it for you again here on the worksheet. You can do that later on your own because we kind of just went over that. That's just re-emphasizing what we've been doing. I want you to go with me to the next page, to key signatures. We've got 10 minutes of class left and I really want to get into this. This is our last worksheet, so you can do that previous one there on your own later. It's basically following suit what we were just doing together, writing out the scales on the staff, okay? Key signatures. So from now on, when we speak of a certain key, we're really referring to a scale. That the particular letter name is where it starts. So if we're in the key of F, we would start on F if we were playing the scale, meaning we all know, we learned, you might not have memorized obviously it, but I do, but that's just because of years of seeing it. But F, when you see the key signature of F, it has one flat. One flat. And if you see a key signature on a song that has one flat, it's the key of F. You just got to remember that. So when you're writing out the key of F, you know there's going to be F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. If you say the key of D, you would immediately think of a scale that started on the note of D. The key of D then will always have two sharps. They're F sharp and C sharp. Now if we mean the key of F, well, which is what I just said, wow, it's like I knew what this guy was getting ready to say. Think of a scale starting on F. The key of F will always have one flat. Who can tell me real quick which flat it is? B flat. Thank you very much. So a key signature then is a group of sharps or flats found on a staff at the beginning of a song. These flats or sharps are always placed on the lines or spaces of the notes that they change in order to make a major scale. Let me give you an example of what it sounds like. I know it's easier to hear than to see at this point in your life, and I understand that. So when I go through, a lot of the times when you're beginning, you're wondering, well, if I can go from C to C without using black keys, why can't I do it going from B to B or A to A? Let me play it for you. Starting on C, using no black keys, this is what it sounds like. Which sounds correct. But if we went to D and played no black keys and just white keys, it would sound like this. Which does not sound correct. It should sound like this. It's very different. But let's manipulate it even more and go to E and listen to how this sounds with no black keys. Doesn't sound accurate, but this is what it should sound like. See how it flows better when you're using your diatonic scales from using your sharps? So the key signatures would look like this for those keys for which we have already written out scales. We already learned these so far, but this is what they look like now when you see a song. So number one, if we see, and by the way, you have a cheat sheet down there at the bottom that tells you which key has which sharps and which flats in it. But let's walk through this together. Number one, if it has no sharps or no flats in the key signature, what key is that? C. Very good. It's the right key of C right there for number 1. But number 2, remember I told you in the beginning that if you want to find what key you're in, you find the sharp, if it's sharps, you find the sharp that is furthest to the right and go up half a step in your key signature. So of those 2 there, of the 2 sharps that you see, which one of these is the furthest to the right? Obviously it would be the one furthest to the right, this one. So take that one, go up a half a step. What space is that sharp sitting on? That is C sharp. Half step up from C sharp is, so that is the key of D. That's how you learn that. So number 3, we take the one, there's 4 sharps there. Woo! Which one of these is the furthest to the right? Is the one that is on which line or space? Which is it?
D line.
That would be D sharp. So half step up from D sharp is E. So number 3 is the key of E. See, it's simple. It's simple once you understand. Otherwise, it's like looking at a circuitry diagram. Electronics. I still don't know the difference between wattage, voltage, amperes, and ohms. I have no idea.
I'll give you a lesson sometime.
Yeah, we'll sit down and learn that one of these days. All I know is that when you stick a key in a socket, it hurts. Because my brother did it. I didn't. I watched him do it one time. Like, here, try this. See what happens. Number 4. If it has 1 flat, it is the key of what? You just wrote this up in the top. It is the key of F. There's no trick to this. You just have to remember, if it has 1 flat, it's the key of F. It's always going to be B flat. Number 5, when you're looking at flats, it's different than sharps. Sharps, you go all the way to the, well, it'd be this way for you guys, but I'm doing it for me. All the way to the right, and then up half a step, and that tells you the key. When you're doing flats, you would go to the flat that is the furthest to the right, and then back 1. So it's next to the furthest to the right. And that's what key you're in. So look at number 5. Find the one that is the furthest to the right. Which one is that?
C flat.
C flat. Now back up. The one that is directly to the left of that one.
G flat.
That would be G flat. So that means that we're in the key of G flat. Okay? Number 6. If it has 1 sharp, it's the key of, well, how do you know? Well, I'll tell you what. What line or space is that sharp on? That is on the F line. What's a half step up from F? G. So we know that number 6 is the key of G. Number 7, find the sharp furthest to the right. What ledger space is that is sitting on? That's G. So that is G sharp. What's a half step up from G sharp? A. So 7 is the key of A. 8, which sharp is the furthest key to the right? A sharp. Go up half a step from A sharp and you're sitting pretty on the key of B. And that's how you learn what key we are in. Now, how does that affect you? Yeah, what? Did you have your hand up?
No.
No. Placing a bid, is that what you're doing? I'll sell you something here. How does that affect you as a choir leader? Well, not as much as the pianist. Because if the pianist doesn't know her different keys, she can't play the song. That's just all there is to it. If she can't tell the difference between a sharp and a flat or know what key she's supposed to be in, the pianist and the organist are going to be off and the choir is going to be singing something totally different. But you as a choir leader, it's important for you to be able to understand where you are, because you have to be in control of everything. You need to be able to understand what you're looking at even if you're not playing it. I'm not going to teach you how to play the piano, but I want you to understand what you're looking at when you see a piano. That way you can play different notes and things like that, okay? Alright, so your homework. Go back and finish any of the worksheets you didn't get done. Then make sure that you finish the quiz that we started back somewhere. Yeah, the one that says 27 at the bottom.
About 28.
Yes, yeah, you'll have to turn in page 28 also because it has number 5 at the top. So you'll finish those. That's number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Turn in both of those sheets for me. You'll get a grade for that. Then number 3, what I want you to do is get you a church hymnal, hymn book, whatever you got. If it's not a church hymnal, please tell me. If it is a church hymnal, I'll assume it's a church hymnal when you write it on here. Give an example of a song that's written in each of those key signatures. That will not take you long because it has all kinds. It's not like time signatures where you're like 1 here and one there. I mean, it's got a rainbow of different key signatures. So get you a hymn book and go through and find a song for each one of those key signatures. Tell me, if it's not the church hymnal, tell me which hymn book you're in. Tell me the page number you're on and the name of the song, okay? All right, that's it. How about that? We only went 15 seconds over. That's pretty good. Thank you, Stanford, Nebraska, for being with us tonight. I hope it wasn't too overwhelming for you. If you have any questions, Brother Craig, Brother Jason, somebody can send me an email. We can try to get it ironed out. Otherwise, God bless you. Thank y'all so much. We'll see you next time.